Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ask Desmero. On today's episode, I'm joined by Carrie Cahill with Legendary Docs. Carrie's a business coach and a team culture expert who partners with motivated leaders to transform the way their people communicate, collaborate, and grow. She's going to give us insight into how growth-minded dentists can move beyond firefighting and build sustainable, meaningful progress, one purposeful refinement at a time. Welcome to the show, Carrie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Tell everybody, for those of the audience that don't know who you are, tell them about yourself and how you came to find Legendary Docs and really kind of make it your own.
Yeah. So my career has been kind of a long and wild ride, but basically I started out as an executive HR partner, did 20 plus years in executive HR partnership. And a lot of that job is coaching your presidents of companies to be better communicators, to create more alignment, to create more momentum, and ultimately make a lot more money. But after a long time, I got tired of making big companies money. And I said, you know what, I'm going to hang my own shingle and I'm going to coach my own business. So I started coaching dentists about 10 years ago. And I am so passionate about the dental business model. And then about a year ago, my husband and I decided, we wanted to move closer to our grandkids. And so we're going to move to the Jacksonville area. And good friends of ours who also were executive coaches in the dental space said, hey, you want to open a new company together? And we said, yeah, we would love to. And so they're like, we've got this brainchild idea of how we can create more connection between doctors because dentists can be so isolated. And we're like, tell us all about it. And so we decided to hitch our wagon to that horse, and Legendary Docs was born. So it's been really exciting.
That's awesome. And I love both of them as well. So if they're watching, love you guys.
Yeah, and Carrie, hey.
Exactly.
I have the word Carrie as many times as possible. So our partners are Sid and Carrie, and then there's Sean and Carrie. So it's so funny because people are like, you guys are different Carries. We're like, we are. When they
different
don't
Carries.
know us, we are. We're different,
right.
Different sides of the state, but still here.
Exactly. And we're happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about, we get an idea of what you do now. So when you go in and you talk to business leaders, business owners, dentists in particular, what's the biggest mistake that dentists make when they're trying to grow their practice?
So you're absolutely right. This is true for most small business owners, but I see it show up a lot with dentists. And it's that they're trying to fix every single thing all at once. And so if you think about a dentist, they're basically problem solvers by nature. It's what they do. Somebody comes in, they're like, they want to solve that problem. The thing is that growth without clarity and without direction is just chaos with momentum, is what we say.
That sounds right.
And it shows up. You walk into an office and you can see it right away because you've got that front desk team that's stressed out and they're just doing whatever they think is right rather than having any direction or vision or purpose to it. Everything feels busy. So the doctor thinks, oh, I'm being really productive. But then they look at their day and at the end, they have a very small amount of production or collections and can't figure out where it went all wrong. Because they were working so crazy. So for us, we try really hard when we come into a practice, we want to make purposeful adjustments that create relief. We want to make sure that there's 6 different compass areas that we focus on. And we want to make sure that when we do that, we're focused on the right thing at the right time so that we can create just a more positive momentum and create relief before we go into any kind of a redesign or anything like that.
That makes total sense. So, and having a little bit of a background in dentistry, I get this. I partly blame dental school for this because they don't teach dentists how to be business people. They give them one, maybe two classes. Those are elective usually on how to run a business. They teach them how to be clinicians. So at what point do they need to stop thinking like a clinician and start thinking more like a CEO? Because I feel like that's the biggest issue that practice owners face.
You're so right. And it's such a challenge for them because they're artists and they're scientists, and that's what attracted them to dentistry, the artistry of it and the clinical nature of it. And all of a sudden they have a team reporting to them and nobody taught them how to lead a team. So my baseline answer is as soon as you've got a team, you need to start thinking like a CEO. You need to start thinking like a business owner and not just a dentist. And this is such a hard shift for most of them because there's a real gap in what they've been taught. To your point, exactly. In dental school, they might have been taught, here's how to set up a basic business plan, but nobody's ever been with them through the execution. And then they
Right.
get out of dental school and they don't even have any friends to talk to, really. I mean, they might reach out to a couple of folks in their cohort, but it's kind of distant. Nobody wants to show all their cards because they're afraid of being judged. They don't have an accountability partner. And so they end up so often I see this, they end up, and you probably do too, they hire an office manager and say, handle all my money. And then they stop paying attention to their money,
Yeah.
which is a huge risk. And then they just kind of outsource their schedule to somebody else and they think it's all running because they have conversations with folks in the back. And
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy because that's not really leadership. They're like, oh no, I'm delegating. We're like, okay, that's not leadership. That's just creating blind spots and that's creating risk. You still, even though you delegate, have to lead. You have to have a vision. You have to set up boundaries. You have to set up expectations and systems. And then you hold people accountable to those. And that's thinking like a CEO. That's saying, okay, what's my goal for the year? How am I going to accomplish it? And who do I need to engage? And how do I inspire my team to get on board with that?
Mm-hmm. And
So,
having a method for setting the goal is important too, because so many people just blindly set a goal. They'll look at last year's numbers and just say, okay, we made this much last year. Let's do this. And they don't really have a plan for it. So why does that happen? Like why can't, or why don't, I shouldn't say can't because that's unfair.
yeah,
Why do so many practices just set arbitrary numbers? Is it because they don't know how
yes,
to plan their goal setting?
you nailed it. I mean, when for you and I, it's so easy, right? We've come out of huge organizations and people taught us how to do strategic planning and they taught us how to do forecasting. I mean, gosh, you remember in some of your last lives how much leverage you got from just
Ugh.
the act of forecasting, right? It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
fun, but we all did it. And that told us, oh, hey, here's going to be the action steps that I need to take in order to deliver on that forecast. They don't, they don't focus on the long game, like, and I mean just the year, because they're so busy putting out all these little forest fires and those little forest fires that they put out, those little sparks and embers are like, oh, I feel so productive. But they're not setting up key metrics that they want to measure. They're not monitoring any of it. They might look at their production or their collections at the end of the day to see how they're doing. But most of the time when I walk into a practice and I say, hey, what is your production goal for the day? Everybody just, you hear crickets and they just stare at me like,
Mm-hmm. Or they're
uh,
setting up the wrong metrics. Because I
yeah,
know a lot of doctors are like, well, I had a full schedule today.
ah,
My goal tomorrow is to have a full schedule.
right.
No.
Oh, it's the worst. And I always say that to them. I'm like, well, what else are you measuring? And they're like, well, I feel this one, I feel busy. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, what about your hygiene department? What's your recare effectiveness look like? And they'll say, oh, 98%. And I said, okay, so when was the last time you measured it? And they're like, oh no, but I mean, it feels like it's 98%. I mean, we see everybody. I'm like, do you see everybody or only the people that you love that are really easy to reschedule? And they'll look at me and I'm like, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time we'll look and it's in the 40th percentile.
Yeah.
And the hard part about that, as you know, is that that's their growth mechanism, right? So they're not even measuring where their growth can come from because most of restorative, huge chunk of it is going to come out of their hygiene chair.
Yeah.
So The beautiful thing about really truly sitting down for an annual plan, setting up the right, to your point, the right metrics and setting up the right measurement for it, and then holding your people accountable on regular conversations about how you're performing against that, that gives them progress and it's tied directly to their purpose.
Hmm.
Because otherwise everything just feels urgent, but nothing is
Yeah.
actually important, So I think if people understand that growth doesn't have to be stressful, but it needs to be planned and it needs to be fulfilling. And then it's easy to make it sustainable. Our doctors
Hmm.
regularly see 15 to 20% growth year over year. And other doctors are like, every year? And I'm like, yeah, because we plan for it. We set up strategies, we set up processes, we set up things so that they can grow and it can still be fun.
Yeah. And there's no shame in asking for help. I think a lot of people have this sense of shame, like, okay, I went through dental school, I did all these things. Now I'm running a business, but they're just embarrassed to ask for help because they feel like they should know these things when it's the exact opposite.
Totally. They're like, oh, I should be able to figure it out, which is crazy. I mean, for
Or they
you and
read a
I,
book. They read one book
oh,
and
or,
everything
oh
comes
no,
out of
it's
that
even
one
better.
book.
I went to my Facebook group and I asked a question and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Okay. Hold on. That's, that's not the measure of having everything that you need in order to move forward on your vision. That might be somebody
Hmm.
else's vision. They're going to say, oh yeah, I did it this way. This is my vision. Okay. Hold on a second. Let's make sure that your systems, your processes, your direction is meeting your vision for the type of practice you want to have, the people you want to work with, the services you want to offer, all of that. And I think, the toughest part is it really comes down to having a solid plan and having people by your side that can help you execute it. Having people
Right.
that are out for you, right? Like in your role, we often work with our doctors and they'll say, okay, I know I'm going to need to expand out of my space in X amount of time. Okay, great. Well, in that amount of time, then we need to be talking to, you know, you got to call my front desk because you're going to need somebody that's looking well in advance for that. They're like, oh, well, how far in advance? And I'm like, we're probably already too late.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Most of the
what?
time people, yeah. Hmm.
But they can't have all of these connections or all of these relationships. You've got to have somebody in your corner that's like, oh, I've got the person that can solve that.
Hmm.
And, and
Yeah.
is able to say, okay, if your vision for 1 year is this, and your vision for 3 years is this, 5 years is this, and you're growing at a rate of 20% per year, and that's gonna funnel down to how you're impacting all of your operatories. That's gonna funnel down to the amount of team members you have in place. It's gonna funnel down to the skill sets, the service offerings, the insurance relationships, etc. You
Yeah.
need a lot more than just a Facebook group to get you through that, or a book, like you said. You're gonna need a
Right.
lot.
Right. And to your point, you're right. A lot of times when they do talk to colleagues or they're, people they went to school with, that sort of thing, and they try to get advice from them, what they're not taking into account is that it's not a one size fits all
Right.
sort of situation, right? What works in Atlanta doesn't work in Jacksonville, and what doesn't work in Jacksonville may work in, New Jersey, who knows? But
Yeah.
without that knowledge of what works in the area, what the goals are for each individual person in that area and how you fit into that whole piece of the puzzle, how do you know? You can't
Right.
just go by what your friend in California says is working for them, because that's great, but
It's a
they're
totally
in
different market.
California.
Yeah, I remember, and it's so funny because I used to work in very small, very, very small rural Southern markets.
Hmm.
I would have all these people from very large metropolitan markets saying, when I first got into dentistry, oh, here's how it works. Well, I very quickly found out that's not how it works in a super rural Southern market. And it's just a different dynamic. And
Hmm.
so you look at those environments and you say, okay, what's going to work best here? What's going to work best with this team? That's the other thing that you brought up about going on Facebook and stuff. That person's team, your friend from school, they don't have the same team you have. And they're not pulling from the same places. And they have different challenges with their team. Every human is individual. And so you have to have that ability to coach your people to meet your vision. And it all needs to be planned. It needs to be systematized. So it's very easy to execute.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you could give every dentist one piece of advice about building a stronger team, what would it be? Because like you said, it's very important to have the right team to achieve these goals. So what's your key point that you would say, hey, you really need XYZ in order to build a strong team?
So this is coming out of 25 years in executive HR, but I firmly believe, I put my head on this, that the most important investment any doctor can ever make is in their team. And I know through years and years and years of success at this, that the investment that you make in a culture, it it doesn't happen by accident. It is intentional. It is planned, and
Mm-hmm.
it's done through very, very clear expectations. Every employee should know exactly through verbal conversation, not just telling, but verbal conversation, what's expected of them, what a great outcome looks like. And then it is the responsibility of the team and the doctor to have regular communication, holding each other accountable, regular dialogue about how their responsibilities are leading to the outcome that was wanted. I think people make this huge mistake like, oh, I bought everybody pizza and that's a good culture. Pizza and cookies do not equate to culture, everybody. I hate to break it to you. What equates to culture, and I hear it all the time, "Oh, we're like family."
Mm.
I'm thinking, I don't know about you, but some families are dysfunctional. And some families don't get the results that they want or the experience that they want. So before you call it like family, who's sitting back there in the, lab, like they're in their back bedroom texting their friends about what it's like in their family?
Mm-hmm.
This is a business, right? So run it like a business. We can still have fun. We can be friendly, but everybody should know exactly what's expected of them. What does a great outcome look like? And they should be held accountable to it through regular conversations. And that requires somebody who's not afraid. That requires a boss who's not afraid to upset the apple cart. And that means that you have to make sometimes some hard choices, because people are
Right.
either selecting off the bus or they need to be selected off the bus.
And I bet if
That
you asked dentists or any business owner, that's their least favorite thing to do ever is not just letting someone go, but dealing with the dynamics of a team. That so many dentists, even that I've worked for, I've been responsible for hiring people.
Yeah.
I mean, pat myself on the back. I've done a good job. But that's beside the point. My dentist was just lucky. That's beside the point. I'm just kidding. He was
No,
lucky though.
I was
He
a
was lucky.
recruiter. You know when you're good at hiring, and there are people that are really, really darn good at hiring, and then there's people that are hiring that are horrible at it.
Yeah.
Like they're hiring mini-me's, not a good idea.
Right.
Or-
People that fit their personality style instead of the entire practice. So how does Legendary Docs help doctors with that?
So we are very, very good at helping them identify both where there's the gaps in their practice, whether it's skill or will or culture. We're very good at helping them learn how to talk to their people far more effectively, because that's usually a huge gap. And we're very good at helping them make some of those tougher choices around when it's time to let somebody go and when it's time to bring somebody new in. The other thing that they often don't think of is that when they're too slow to hire, they create a stress on their team. And
Mm-hmm.
they're really, really, they do two things. They're either too slow to hire because they're afraid to spend the money and they create stress on their team, or their team's told them, no, I don't want anybody else in here because that person could upset our dynamic. And then the doctor is suffering. Or the second thing is they keep throwing people at a problem without solving the problem.
Yeah.
And as an executive coach, we really help them work through how to fix either of those two problems, either how to get people over the worry of having somebody new in the dynamic, or how to fix the problem that they keep throwing people or money at.
Yeah. And you know, what I also find interesting and what I learn from a lot of my doctors is that even though very often they finally get the whole team dynamic working, sometimes they're still very lonely.
Yeah.
It's lonely being at the top sometimes, right? So what do they do to keep from feeling isolated and still have like that good team dynamic, but
Yeah.
be involved and stop feeling so isolated in leadership, I guess?
Yeah, that's such a great question because I think people don't ask that enough in dentistry. Like, if you think about a business that's as big as a dental office, and dental offices are very big businesses, most of the time they have other executives to talk to, somebody else who understands what they're carrying, whether it's the systems, the technology, the location, the people. When I came into dentistry, I was stunned how isolated dentists are and how siloed their thinking can be because there's not a big feed of alternate ideas flowing through that practice. And so when we created Legendary, one of the things we really wanted to do was remove that. We wanted to create groups where doctors could come together in a safe environment and they could mastermind around things that were really challenging to them. So, one of the very unique qualities that we put in place in this organization is that our doctors do meet quarterly for a mastermind and they talk through in person, and it's facilitated, but they talk through in person the things that are challenging them. And then they have accountability partners. So if they say, I'm going to take X step, they have somebody that says, did you take X step? And we found out that there's something so powerful that when a doctor says, I went through that too. Here's what worked for me. Here's the resources I had. All of a sudden, it's like this outside wisdom that they don't feel so isolated. And somebody else was in that same arena with them. And they, through that process, decide, oh, this step will work for me, but this one doesn't sound like it'll work for me. It's not a good fit. But they have this room of people that are there to cheer them on, that are there to hold them accountable, that are there to share experiences. And all of a sudden, the landscape doesn't feel quite so lonely. And, you know, the other thing is when you're by yourself, that financial pressure, I see doctors do this very often. They're like, oh, I'm doing X, Y, Z. And they'll shout out these numbers. And those numbers have no um, bearing on whether or not they're profitable, right? But it shuts down other doctors that are like, oh gosh, I don't know if I've done this or I don't know if I've done that. Maybe I can't ask them this. They're not going to relate to that. So when we put these groups together, we really do curate them so that people aren't intimidated and
Okay.
they can be transparent and sharing. And we've seen such a great community built on this of like minds and being able to work through really challenging things. It's pretty exciting.
And that was going to be my next question, actually, is how you eliminate that competitive feeling in the groups that you put together, because you're absolutely right. When newer doctors get together with somewhat seasoned doctors, or even other doctors that are newer that have stepped into a practice that's doing really big numbers, and they
Right.
shout those numbers out, you're right. They have a tendency to kind of shut down and go, well, I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just going to sit here quietly and not ask my questions because I don't want to look like an idiot or a loser. And, I mean, everybody starts somewhere. And
Yeah,
until they gain that knowledge and really start working through those problems, it's very hard to grow. And
exactly.
and
Exactly.
some people can't get past the fear of growing. There's a lot of fear associated with growing, right? I know for one doctor in particular I worked with, he didn't want to grow. He was like, you know what? I'm happy. And we had a team that could have done so much
Yeah.
more than what we were doing. And we tried, but he's like, you know what, guys, I'm very happy. And that's okay if you're
Yeah.
like that. That's fine. But we
As long as
wanted
you have
to,
a team, it's
yeah,
okay.
as long as you have a team. You
As
don't
long
want
as
the
I have
opposite,
people with that, it's okay. But if you've got some gung ho people on there, they're gonna look for somewhere to go where they
right?
can be
And that's what
accountable.
happened.
Did it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
You know,
happened.
I think the key to these mastermind groups, and I've seen them done in a lot of scenarios, right? So, like when I was coaching through the SBA for a big program in Memphis, people would try to start these up on their own and they never stuck. And I think it's because you really need a facilitator, somebody in there to keep everybody on track. I think you need to have it curated, right? So that you don't have somebody that's in a startup week 3 and with somebody that's 15 years, $3 million practice. Those
Right.
things, that gets really challenging because the 15-year, $3 million practice has plenty of advice. And then the
Mhm.
other person's like, I just need to know from somebody who's in it with me, like, what is it like to hire a team? Stuff like that. So I do think you're right. It's like you have to have somebody that is curating the right groups. You can have an incubator group, you can have really experienced groups, and so that people are talking like. I think also in this environment, to your point about that doctor, growth can look so scary because everybody thinks that growth means I have to work harder. And that if I could send one message out there to folks, it doesn't. It doesn't. The coolest thing about dentistry is that there is so many different ways that you can grow and not work harder. Now
Mhm.
you work, I mean, you have to work hard enough. You might have a measure that is hard enough, but there's lots of ways to continue to be more profitable or serve more people or do more expansive dentistry. There's so many ways to serve in this business. And I think doctors get very siloed because they never have been exposed to all the different ways that they can actually do more or serve more. So,
Mhm.
they
And
don't have
that's yeah, and that's the key is it is a business. Dentistry is a business. No matter how you frame it, what it boils down to is yes, you are helping people. We are helping people, but it is still a business. And so many people can't seem to marry the idea of business with the idea of healthcare and helping people.
I know. And when did they start attaching that getting paid fairly for it was bad? Like, that's the other thing. It's like, it's mind blowing. If
Mhm.
people are like, oh, I shouldn't do that. I'm like, I can't drill my own tooth. I cannot drill my own tooth. I can't fix this.
Right.
And I can't straighten my own teeth. And
Right.
you should be paid fairly for the fact that you can remove all that decay, that you can create health, that you can stop an infection, you can stop it from going to the bone, you can stop it from going to the brain, you can stop it from going to the heart. Hold on a second. We should feel good about getting paid fairly for doing something so remarkable. And
Right.
you're right, that's a business. It should be a business. And
Mhm.
I should feel
Yeah.
really good about it. It's kind of a crazy dynamic, right?
It is a little bit. So tell me this, and this is for everybody out there. How does Legendary differentiate themselves from some of the other consulting groups that are out there? Because I work with a lot of startups, and a lot of
Yeah,
startups come with consulting groups sometimes. So
they
how
do.
does Legendary differentiate themselves from those groups? I'm not going to
I,
name names. You know
that's
who they
totally
are.
love it. We all know. Yeah. So the first thing we do not do is we are not going to come in and we're not going to drop a binder on their desk or a virtual binder on their desk and say, follow all these rules and you'll be successful. We are 100% going to customize every single thing that they need. We have tons of experience in this space, but we are very one-on-one, hands-on. We are coaching the doctor and the team. So one of the things is a lot of times people will come in and just coach the doctor, but it's very hard without engagement from the team to get that pull through that you need to be successful. So customized, we are very intentional about coaching both the doctor and the team. And the third component is these masterminds where you have additional support beyond just your one-to-one relationship with your doctor. So I think those are some of the key features that make us different. A lot of folks are tied very, very tightly to a system or a process that they've been using on rinse and be repeat for years. But for us, it's going in and looking at a practice and saying, what is your vision? And most dentists don't have one. So let's create one. And what are your values? And let's align every single thing that we do with this practice to your vision, your values, and then let's help build out your team to accomplish it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Carrie. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. Couple tries. Here we are. We made it.
So great to chat with you always. We could talk for hours about this stuff. I swear.
I know we could. Well, tell everybody out there how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of Legendary Docs so that they have that information.
Absolutely. You can reach me very easily. Just call me directly, 779-220-1818. Please check us out on the internet at legendarydocs.com, and I will have my email below.
Awesome. Thank you again, Carrie. And thank you out there, everyone. Check us out for our next episode. Keep an eye out on the YouTube channel, Ask Desmero. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.